Hey guys, and welcome to the Service Alliance Group podcast. I am your host with the most equipment, Zach Kreider, and today's podcast was recorded while at United Servicers Convention, ASTI 2022. It's another one of our interviews that we did while on site. I hope that you enjoy this. It's an interesting view, maybe from 30,000 foot of the appliance industry. Kind of gives you different insight to different areas. Really cool guy, Tim, and I'm excited for you to meet him. I'm gonna shut up. Enjoy the interview. Hey guys, and welcome to Appliance Alliance podcast. I am your host with the most equipment. And again, we are live here at ATSI. It's been a fantastic time networking, doing all the things. And this morning on a whim at breakfast, because we've been talking about, if you've been watching the past podcasts or whenever this podcast shows up, we've been talking about networking, meeting people, not sitting at the same table. So I sat down to breakfast and met this gentleman. His name is Tim, and he is from Hisense.
That's correct, yep. I'm Tim Burdick. I'm from Hisense Appliances and Electronics USA.
So, Tim, you have we usually tell people to give the 5-minute elevator pitch of who you are and why we should care what you have to say.
Ooh, okay.
But our entire episode is like who you are and why we care what you have to say.
Okay.
So let me preface this. You have a very unique perspective on the industry because
yes,
you've literally been in every part of this industry, and you're a rarity. There's not many people that have done that. So
yeah, there's not many.
So start at the beginning, and I'll just interrupt as we find things that we need to hit on along the way.
Sure. Okay, so basically been in and around the industry all my life. So my dad, for those of you that may be listening or know him, Tim Burdick Jr. has worked for Whirlpool for many years, had his own business as well. I grew up in it, and I was always around it, and like any good kid growing up, my dad had his little shop down in the basement, so I would help him out and do some different things. And, you know, like most kids, little kids, I would like run my fingers across the evaporators and like bend all the fins, and yeah, everyone's going, oh, you're the one. Yes, I was the one who did that. So kind of grew up in it, and I always remembering my dad tell me, like, you'll never go hungry in this industry. There will always be food on the table, right? So like any good teenager at that point, I'm like, wow, nah, I don't want anything to do with the appliance industry, right? So we moved out to Arizona. My dad was a technician for Whirlpool. We moved out to Arizona, and I finished high school in Arizona. When I finished high school, he actually got transferred back to Techline for Whirlpool back in Michigan. Well, he left Michigan left for Michigan, and I stayed in Arizona. So I went to work for Whirlpool, and I sat when they had factory service in Phoenix. I sat at the desk, and I was the one answering phone calls and scheduling the service and help dispatching and pulling parts or whatever they needed. Then eventually they shut down factory service, and I kind of moved on and was out of the industry for a little bit. My dad came back down, got transferred back to Arizona from Whirlpool, and back in and around it, you know, seeing what he does as a trainer and a regional manager. And then I started working for a parts distributor in the Phoenix area. And I was out selling parts. I was going around and I was the guy selling parts. And I went to apartment complexes to sell parts. I went to other shops and sold parts. That's what I did.
So you've already done two things. You've worked
CSR.
Yeah, you're a CSR.
Yep.
You worked Techline. Well, more things. CSR, Techline. You worked.
No, my dad did Techline.
Oh,
I didn't do
Techline
yet.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So CSR
and sales.
Part sales.
Yep.
Like already. That's all you've done.
That's it.
My gosh.
So I went out to these apartment complexes to sell parts, and we started talking a little bit, and they started asking me, because we're talking about a relationship about my history. They would ask me, well, why is my refrigerator doing this? Or why do I have a refrigerator that's doing this? I'm like, and I could answer the questions. And for the harder questions, I call my dad up and say, hey, you know, well,
You had an understanding.
I had an
because
understanding of it.
You learned by osmosis, almost. Yeah.
So I grew up in it, had an understanding, made my part sales pretty good. But then I started asking my dad, and if my dad wouldn't answer, the techs that would come in to get parts, I would ask them, well, hey, why does the refrigerator do this? Or why is the washer doing this? And one technician finally said, you know what? I'm done answering your questions. Come ride with me, and I'll show you.
That's an awesome offer.
Well, it was really good, but he's been friends with my dad. My dad is actually the one who trained him when he came in. And now he made a deal with my dad and said, I'll hire your son as a technician if you train him. So I got in the van and started doing service calls as a subcontractor, contractor technician. And my dad rode with me on every single call that I went on. Every single call. And I said, okay, well, this is definitely something I want to do. So I opened my first service company on my own. So now I'm a one-man show operation. And I'm still kind of selling parts on the side and running my own service company, one-man show. Yeah. And I took on Samsung. That was that was it. Because no one else wanted to touch Samsung. Right? No one else wanted to touch them.
Not much has changed. I love Samsung. I love Samsung. I'm not picking. I'm just saying the mentality.
The mentality for a lot is the same, but no one else wanted to touch them. So I took them on. That was my bread and butter, and in doing so, I became really, really good at Samsung.
Yeah.
And so now I've been CSR. Okay. I've worked at a parts warehouse. I've been a technician. I've now owned a business and running my own service company and doing warranty work and understanding how that process works. And then at an ASTI, actually one that was happening here in Florida years ago, Samsung actually came up to me and said, hey, we would like to see if you would be interested in becoming a trainer. And so I said, great. Oh, I got to back up. I actually forgot this. So when I was selling parts at the warehouse, right, they had a deal where they would go in and train the apartment complex staff on how appliances work. So I'd actually already done a little bit of training for apartment complexes. So I forgot. That's
impressive. That. If you're not hearing this resume is ridiculous. Like, it is just a crazy, ridiculous resume.
So then I started working for Samsung as a trainer and as a technical trainer. So I was a technical trainer for Samsung, and then that led to me becoming a technical trainer and product specialist at Frigidaire, Electrolux. And then from there, I actually ended up going back to Samsung for a little bit. Left Samsung and restarted my service company and hired a couple techs.
Yeah, you weren't a one-man show anymore. So you were a one-man show the first time around. And now you've come around where you're adding technicians into this.
Right. Yeah, so now I'm adding technicians into it. So now I got that aspect of it. And then I got a phone call one day from a buddy of mine that says, hey, I am looking for someone to help us build, works for another manufacturer. I'm looking for someone to help us build some content. So now I'm taking this and I'm making visual content and PowerPoints and how-to videos and training videos for Fisher-Paykel, for GE.
Now you're stepping into the things that I love.
So now I'm stepping into some of that aspect as well. I've done that. And then I got a call from another friend of mine from my days at Electrolux and said, hey, I'm working for this company called Hisense, and we want you on staff to do our training and run all of our technical creation. And I said, okay, cool. Yeah. So now let's see, I've worked for Whirlpool. I've worked for a parts distributor. I've had my own business as a one-man show. I've been a technical trainer for Samsung, Electrolux, Hisense, technically GE, because I worked on GE Smart HQ service team. I worked on that team for a little bit. Fisher-Paykel, making content for them. And I've been a business owner with multiple technicians.
As well as a solo. So this resume is just like a laundry list of stuff. So now that we've just taken 10 minutes to
10 minutes of resume time.
But here's why I wanted to take that time and really wanted to break into that. You have a unique perspective on the industry, right? Like we were talking at breakfast, so many guys, and I've been that guy before, like and I do service for Hisense through another through NSA.
Yeah.
So I know that not all manufacturers are out to get you, right? But sometimes when you're in the field, when you're that technician and you're separated from it, you feel like, oh, these manufacturers hate us and they don't. Yeah. Give us the 10 or 20,000 foot view, because you're kind of like, you've kind of been in all these
different spots. Yeah. So first off, the manufacturers don't hate you. They don't. They understand that you as a technician and as a service company are a necessity, and you are what is going to help drive their sales, because that is an important aspect to them in their customer service relations, right? So they know you are a necessity. Now, why it doesn't seem like that is because you have to also look at the manufacturing side, right? You have to look at this. This is a global or worldwide, or even if it's just a national company, they still have to make the product, right? Go through that whole process, that whole engineering process. And as much as we all love engineers, right? Yeah. Engineers do different things for different reasons. It may not always make sense to us, but there's always a reason behind why there's so many screws in something, or why the screws are there and not there.
It doesn't seem to make sense at all.
Doesn't seem to make sense. Most of the time. But usually there is a reason, a functionality structurally behind that done.
And I think that all could be solved in communication. I mean, like, I know it's just so much to do it, but like, how hard is it to tell your trainers, like, hey, here's why? You know what I mean? Like, I'm playing devil's advocate here.
And I love that. My wife tells me I do that all the time. But the reason for that is, the trainers can ask, right? And a lot of the trainers,
the ones who care, ask.
Not even just the ones that care. A lot of the trainers, we were once technicians. Yeah. So we ask those questions. Yeah. Now, the reasons we don't get those answers back, maybe there's a couple different reasons. There's a lot of reasons. Yeah. Whether it's maybe the engineer who originally designed it is no longer there, because they move around as much as technicians do, right? Or those of us that work in the corporate aspect, every time we come to these conferences, it's like you see the same person, like, what shirt you wearing this time, right?
It's so true. It's so true. So true.
What company you at now?
Yeah.
So they move around just as much.
It's like NASCAR.
Yeah, it's like NASCAR. You just move around. Change the sponsor. But they move around just as much, right? So maybe that engineer is not there, so the new engineer doesn't know why we did it this way, but they're working on the new prototype that's going to change it, and they can't release that information yet.
Communication.
How
hard is it to write a note? As technicians, like that's where we're thinking, like, we have to write notes on everything. So why would but engineers don't think that way. That's not in their. It's not. They design it, they make sure it works, and then
it's off
out
to
the door.
And that's the other part. It's off to the next portion, right? So if
I was going to go there, but
So if you take like a stack washer dryer, you have one engineer that's working on just the water valves. Like, that's it. They do not know anything else about the washer or anything else about the dryer. They know their component.
Sure.
And that's it.
Sure.
Because that's what they're responsible for.
Right.
So
it's modular. It's literally like taking a machine that's modular and going, okay, this is my job. This is my wheelhouse. This is my lane. Because you can't be an expert in everything.
You can't be an expert in everything. So then, as a trainer coming back and saying, okay, now I would have to sit down and literally have a discussion with 85 to 100 different engineers. We all know how much fun it is to talk to an engineer to begin with, let's be honest, right? But you have to have all those discussions to try and piece everything together, and there's just not enough time to do that.
And then you add another layer to this, then you got to go in manufacturing. Things happen in manufacturing.
Then you actually got to put it online. Yeah, so then you actually take that concept, and they do what's called a they do a manufacturing spec, and then a production spec.
Yeah.
So now you got to go through and actually make it, see if it works, and then you send those notes back to engineering. They change what needs to be changed, and then they finally make the unit.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things I did get to do when I was at Electrolux, is I was in between that process. So they would make the manufacturing run, and then they would send us the prototype.
Figure out what's going on with it.
Figure out what's going on. Okay, here it is.
And then kick back
our ideas, and then go from there.
Yeah.
Now, we did have a little bit, most of us trainers do have a little bit of say in things, but at the same time, some
You're
aspects,
not an engineer.
We're not an engineer.
Yeah.
And number two, some things that we'd say we would like change to make it easier for technicians.
Yeah.
Now we have to look at the money aspect of it.
Yeah, how much is it going to take?
How much is it going to cost to go back and change that whole production line and retool the production line to
100%.
do that? And that's like, to change one tool on a production line is like $200,000 at least.
Yeah, at least.
At least.
Well, and I'm going to pick on engineers. Drop the ego, right? For the love of God, drop the ego.
Good luck with that one.
I know. That's I may have to cut this, so I'm just giving a little brief thing here.
Yeah.
I'm going to share a story about Hisense specifically, because that other layer is then you have manufacturing that happens, and things happen in manufacturing that there is absolutely no way that you could there's no way you could anticipate. Everything went great in between the manufacturing run or spec and the production spec, and then you're like, all right, now we're going to full send it. We know what we're doing. Whoop, off the line it goes. So we were talking earlier, I'm a nerd, and I had a chance to work with Anton down in Georgia because he couldn't get his hands on a specific drink cooler that had been causing a ton of issues for Hisense.
Yeah.
And it was making noise, and it was making this weird noise, and it was, once we figured it out, it was something in manufacturing, but couldn't figure it out. Customer kept going, it's making noise, and it wouldn't make noise when you were there.
Oh, those are always the greatest.
Right?
Right?
And so there was but she wasn't alone. There was a ton of machines like this. And he goes, listen, there's a lot of machines like this, and we can't figure it out. And I can't get one in the lab. I don't know what happened. You're a smart guy. Can we make something happen? And he, ran at flagpole. Long story short, machine comes to my shop, and I'm able to sit there and nerd out and pick through it and figure this out. And we ended up pushing a bulletin through based on the work that I had done, that I had figured out, that it was the heat exchanger was just sitting in such an awkward position that it was sitting there and literally rattling on the casing, and then just needed a little bit more the insulation foam along the bottom. So and then that's where the trainers have to come in. You got to create these technical bulletins, and people have to know how to handle the technical bulletins. But that happens in manufacturing. That's just weird things happen that
happens in manufacturing. But then you, since you touched on that, so then it's not the trainers that necessarily make the bulletins either. Right. So most manufacturers have their own technical writing department. Right. So now you got that issue that's being brought back through tech line or product support. Now they have to take those over to the technical writing group, and now the technical writing group has to get with engineering to figure out what the problem is, what the solution is, and then they have to come back and get the technical bulletin roll.
You're not only filling it in the field, right? We have to take care of what's happening in the field, but it can't happen again.
Right. So
because that costs so much money to fix in the field. It has to be fixed in manufacturing. Yeah.
So now we got to go back to engineering. We got to get the problem with engineering, and then engineering has to say, okay, yes, this is a problem. Yeah. That's always a fun conversation.
Yeah, again, we go back to the ego thing. They don't want to. Yeah, they didn't make a mistake. Yeah. There's no way they made a mistake. Yeah.
But then once they say yes, there is a problem, and here's the solution to fix it. Right. That's got to go back to the technical writing group. Right. Technical writing group has to put together the bulletin. The bulletin has to go to legal. Legal has to approve the bulletin and the wording. Yeah. And then it has to come back, and then it comes back to the trainer so we can actually dispense it out to the field.
It's a lot of steps.
It's a lot of steps, man.
So
I'm exhausted just thinking about it.
So if your eyes haven't glossed over, you've hung with us this far. Like, this guy's got a laundry list. He knows what the heck he's talking about. And we come to, there's just so many cogs in the wheel that there's just no way. Yeah. And so, you know, you almost get to the point where you as a technician, like, if you don't understand all those steps that led up to that, and why would you? You're a technician, you're an owner, or whatever. Yeah. Like, that's not your job to understand that. That's why we're doing this podcast. That's why we're having this conversation, because you got to cut these guys a little bit. You do have to cut them a little bit slack. It's just, there's so much.
We're humans. We do make mistakes, and things do take time. Especially the bigger the company, the more time it's going to take.
And so we don't have a ton more time. We have to have more conversations about this, like, because there's just so many more.
There's so many layers.
This is just one layer of the nightmare that is out there. You know, and I definitely want to talk more about, like, how you've seen the industry change and the things that you've seen as you've switched from manufacturer to manufacturer and just done all these different hats. That's a whole nother
podcast right there, man.
And we'll make sure you guys get that. But I want to thank you for your time today. I'm going to give you a chance to kind of plug Hisense real quick. Sure. We're going to do a whole nother podcast. You're going to be our first actual manufacturer representative to get a podcast. Like, you're getting a like an exclusive spot in this. So I'm kind of excited for that. But give us a little plug on who Hisense is.
So Hisense, for you guys, if you have never heard of us, or if you have heard of us, you probably know us from electronics and TVs. We've been in the U.S. for televisions for over 10 years now. For home appliances, we're coming up on about 2 years. And over the next year, we're coming out with 26 new home appliances. We're launching full kitchen suite, full laundry, you name it. We're coming on strong in this market. And they're dumping a lot of resources into making sure that you as technicians and service companies, we build a good partnership with you guys. And we have a great team building that relationship, from our own service network to me, who is running the technical writing department as well as the training department right now, and making sure that we get our information out to you guys and making TechLine available to a wide variety of servicers as well, both in warranty and out of warranty right now, both. As we grow, that may change. There may be subscription fees coming up, but as we grow, that will come down the line. But right now, if you got Hisense, or if you're seeing Hisense, because we are on every Lowe's, we're coming on Home Depot, Best Buy, Costco.com, and yes, ladies and gentlemen, if you did not know, you can buy a full-size 25 cubic foot refrigerator from Walmart.com, and it will be a Hisense refrigerator.
So wild, so wild. And I want to take a moment here, because I do have a relationship with your company, just, you know, as a warranty company. Shout out to TechLine Anton.
Anton, yep. Anton's a great guy.
My brother, I love you. You are a nerd like me, and it has been a pleasure to get to chat with you on TechLine. And it's just, you're awesome at what you do. They don't pay you enough for what you do. That's my little plug for you, man. That's my plug.
We'll run that up the flagpole.
Yeah, run it up flagpole. He's such a cool guy. Like, it's you know, when you meet people that are just like a nerd like you, or like a business mind like you, or, you know, whatever, like, you just, they're such cool people, and you know, it's fun to interact.
Always fun to see, yeah.
And that's why we had you on, because Perfect. I just, you know, met you, and it was, we had to have you. It's such a cool perspective. So I appreciate you so much. We're going to get rocking and rolling. We hope you guys have a great time, and thank you so much for your time, Tim, from Hisense. And
thanks for having me.
You're going to see him again. This guy is just a wealth of knowledge. It's cool. He's got such a varied background, so we'll have you on again, man. We appreciate it.
Excellent. Appreciate it.
For the Appliance Lions podcast, we are signing off. Peace out.